Welcome back to Blacklit Memory. Tonight, we're taking a drive through 10 haunted highways deep in the Appalachian Mountains. Real stories from truckers, travelers, and locals who met things on the road they can't explain. But before we begin, hit subscribe, leave a like, and tell me where you're listening from, because one of these stories might have passed just a few miles from your door. Thank you for being here. Now then, let's begin. I've never been afraid of mountain roads. After nearly 10 years as a long-haul trucker, I've dealt with ice slides in Utah, micro-sleep on Pennsylvania back roads, even helped a pregnant hitchhiker give birth outside Dallas. So when I got passed over for a promotion because I wasn't seasoned enough, I didn't argue. I just took the next delivery to Ohio and routed myself through the worst night pass I knew, Ridge Hollow, to prove who I was. Name's Carla Mendoza. I was 29 then, driving solo in an old rig marked 402. The freight wasn't special, just industrial machinery headed north. But the timing mattered. I left North Carolina around 10 p.m., just as a light rain started tapping the windshield. Forecast said hail after midnight, but the sky still looked clear. Ridge Hollow was one of those steep Appalachian climbs that hugs the mountainside like thread on a needle. No lights. No guardrails, just road paint and nerve keeping you alive. I saw them around midnight. Two faint red lights through the fog, just ahead of a curve. Looked like the tail of a vehicle up the pass. I eased off the gas, gave it distance, but when I turned the corner, there was nothing there, just empty road. I flicked on the CB, checked the local band. This is truck 402 coming up Ridge Hollow. Anyone ahead of me? Nothing. Just static and the sound of wind rushing over an open mic. I figured I was just seeing things. Drivers get road weary at night, right? But this time, I was wrong. Rain thickened. Wipers couldn't keep up. I slowed down, watching every painted line like they were all that held the world together. Then the red lights appeared again. Same distance ahead. Always just far enough. Never closer. Never gone. Like something was leading me forward. I glanced at the GPS. 2 arrows now. One was me. The other, behind. Tracking close and steady. There was no reason for it to be there. I tried the CB again. This time, instead of static, I heard something else. Breathing. Wet. Broken. Like someone gasping through a mouthful of water. The red lights up ahead were higher now. No longer tail height. Suspended. Almost as if they weren't attached to a truck at all, or were on something taller than any rig I'd ever seen. And that's when it clicked. I wasn't following anything. I was being drawn. Some part of me wanted to slam the brakes, pull over, get out and make sense of it. But the smarter part, the part that understands dread, whispered, "Don't." So I kept driving. Higher, slower. The lights always just ahead, until they stopped cold at a blind curve. I slam the brakes. Tires screech. My chest hits the seatbelt hard. The lights go out. And in front of me, nothing. Just a drop. A sheer cliff where the road ends. 10 more meters and I would have been gone. Hail starts hammering the roof. Small but fast, like fingernails on a steel drum. I'm frozen. Then I check my mirrors. Something just ran behind my trailer. A person. Moving fast. I threw the rig into reverse. My hands were shaking. Slick on the gear shift. But I managed to ease back a few feet from the edge. The hail kept coming, hammering the roof and mirrors, bouncing off the hood in sharp little bursts. I needed to get out of there, back down the pass, away from whatever just ran behind me. Then I saw them. The red lights again, this time behind me, hanging in the fog where my tail lights should have been. But I had pulled the power to the rear socket when I stopped. Those lights should not have been on. They glowed too high, like they were not coming from my trailer at all. More like they were floating above it, flickering a little, hovering, waiting. The hail stopped. Just like that. No fade. No drizzle. Just silence. Thick and sudden, like someone had sucked the sound out of the air. Even the engine seemed to quiet. Then came the noise. A soft tap. Then another. Right above me. On the roof of the cab. Like something was climbing across it. I held my breath and reached for the interior light switch, but stopped myself. Darkness felt safer. The roof creaked once. Then again. Slow pressure. Like something heavy shifting its weight. I stayed still. Barely breathed. Even the wipers froze halfway across the glass. A sound scraped down the side of the cab. Metal on metal. Then silence. Then a voice. A whisper I could not place. Not male. Not female. Not human. Just above me. Speaking through the steel like it wanted me to hear, but not understand. Then I saw it. A face. Pressed against the windshield from above. Its eyes were wrong. Too far apart. Its skin looked like stretched wax. Pulled tight over bone. No mouth. Just a long slit where one should have been. The face stared in at me without blinking. Watching. Waiting. I scream and floor the gas. The tires spin for half a second, then catch. The truck lunges forward. The thing on the roof shifts. Something slams down hard on the cab. The whole rig jolts like we hit a deer. In the mirror, I see it drop behind me. A flash of red. The lights flicker once, then vanish. The rest of the pass felt like a dream. I do not remember every turn. Only the feel of the wheel in my hands and the way the fog opened just enough to let me through. Like it had made its point. Like I had been allowed to leave. I reached a fuel stop near the state line just after dawn. The clerk asked about the dents on my roof. I said it was hail. Left it at that. When dispatch asked why I was late, I told them I got caught in a storm. I finished the delivery. Signed the logs. Drove home. Then I did something I had never done before. I removed the rearview mirror from my cab. Took it right off. Threw it into a dumpster behind a diner in Ohio. I never drive Ridge Hollow again, no matter how light the load or how clear the sky. Sometimes, when I pull off at night on a quiet stretch and kill the engine, I still see them. 2 red lights in the fog, floating just a little too high. And if I sit too long, I start to hear that voice again, whispering through the steel. Jesse and I have been working these supply runs for over a year. 1 truck, tight cab, long hours on the road together. We hauled equipment and parts for a private contractor that serviced old power lines in the mountains. He was 30, a few years younger than me, always ready with some dumb joke to kill the silence. I drove, kept the maps, watched the gauges. Jesse handled the calls and made sure the cooler was stocked. Most days, we made a good team. We were cutting through a stretch of forest south of the Noland Ridge when the detour came in. A slide had shut down Route 15. So dispatch rerouted us along an old forestry road that connected through a service trail. They said it would add an hour at most. Jesse didn't mind. He just grinned and said, "Well, I guess we'll see some trees." And wait, there was a marker as we turned off the main line. A stone milepost, half covered in dust, but recently brushed clean. Mile 77. And under the number, stamped like someone had slapped hot tar against it, was a single black handprint. 5 full fingers. Crooked a little to the left. Jesse leaned over, squinting through the windshield. "That's fresh," he said. "Looks like someone just made it. But what's with the handprint?" Rocking that said, I slowed for a better look. The mark glistened like it had hardened in the last few days. Not paint, not weathering, more like something deliberate. Something someone wanted drivers to see. If something in the forest's been freshly marked, don't assume it's the county. Nobody comes back to double-check out there. The road narrowed to gravel and slipped into trees. Old pines leaned close over the path, their branches brushing the top of the cab like searching hands. Rocks clacked under the tires. Every now and then I'd spot an old stake or faded plastic flag, leftovers from when the road still mattered. Jesse had his elbow out the window, half asleep, until the CB sputtered. First just static, but then a voice came through. Soft, choppy. It was him, his own voice. But he was sitting right beside me. He turned toward the dash, confused. Was that me? The dopping vibrations in a process. The radio popped again. The same tone, same rhythm. It wasn't a recording. It sounded like he was answering a question I hadn't asked. Jesse got quiet after that. I kept glancing in the mirrors, watching for movement between the trees. At one point he said, "I think I've seen that van behind us before." "It is Sather. There's no van," I told him. "Just trees. And a generalist." He didn't reply. A fork opened up ahead, to the left. A worn sign hanging off, one hinge read, "Temporary field stop. Do not exit vehicle at night." The building behind it was an old wooden structure, half collapsed, barely standing. The kind of place that once held equipment, or maps, or maybe just shelter during storms. I pulled over, killed the engine. My truck was running hot, and Jesse looked pale. We figured 30 minutes wouldn't hurt. Just water and a bite to eat. Nothing more. That is when I saw him. In the center of the lot, near the base of a broken light pole, stood a figure, covered in a long coat, hood up, face hidden in shadow, not moving. "Jesse," I said, "you see that? Is a creating, is in Traws, and the Connie now." He followed my gaze but frowned. "See what?" "There's nothing there. This Alton Expertane." I blinked, looked again. The lot was empty. We sat in silence, both trucks parked side by side. The forest seemed to close in even tighter. Jesse pulled out a protein bar, then turned to me with an edge in his voice I hadn't heard before. "You sure this is the old utility route? I read about a place once, a stretch like this, where people used to dump bodies. Thought it was just an urban myth. Is last great." I didn't answer. I just stared through the windshield, waiting for something to move. We sat there with the windows up, not speaking. I sipped from a bottle of warm water, eyes still scanning the empty clearing. Then the CB lit up again. A sharp tone this time, not static or voice. A long, drawn-out horn blasted through the speaker. It was our signal tone, but neither of our rigs had been keyed to transmit. I stepped out to check, thinking maybe something shorted in the wiring. That is when I saw it. The stone mile marker, number 77. It was beside the passenger door. We had left it behind 6 miles ago. I froze. My boots felt stuck to the gravel, like moving would somehow confirm what I was seeing. Jesse leaned out the window, asking what I was doing, but I could not answer him. Not yet. I got back in the cab, shut the door. A minute later, I turned to say something to Jesse. He was gone. The passenger seat was empty. I ripped the door open and jumped out, searched around the tires, the tree line, even under the trailer frame, called his name again and again. The forest gave nothing back. 5 minutes passed, maybe more. I do not remember thinking clearly. I just know I started to panic. Then the radio crackled. "Mark, I'm here." I looped around the back. Raid Brightication. Jesse's voice. Calm, almost casual. He stepped into view a second later, waving like nothing had happened. I ran and grabbed him by the shoulders. He flinched a little but smiled. "You okay?" I asked him. "Yeah, just needed to stretch. You looked so tense. I didn't want to spook you." Anyway, and it lied. We got back in. I turned the key. The truck rumbled awake. I did not waste time. Just kept driving. The trees started thinning. The headlights lit up the road ahead. And that is when I saw it. The mile marker. Number 77. We were back where we started. 3 figures step into the road ahead. No warning. No sound. All wearing long coats with hoods pulled low. Each holds a stick topped with a glowing red light. Jesse slams the brakes. I brace against the dash. The figures move fast. They reach the truck in seconds, pounding on the glass. One slams the mirror. Another grabs the door handle. Jesse shouts. I grab the emergency spray from the side pocket and throw open my door. One of them turns toward me. Their face is pale, too long, lips unmoving. I hit the figure with the spray. It stumbles back. Jesse floors the gas. The tires spin. Catch. And we lurch forward. One of them gets clipped and vanishes into the ditch. We do not stop. Not until the forest breaks open and the trees fall behind. In the mirror, I see the stone marker again. Number 77. Then it fades, like it was never there. Before we step into the next story, if you're still here, still listening, with the lights low, maybe drop a comment. Just tell me where you're listening from. It helps more than you know. All right, let's keep going. By the time I turned 45, there were few mountain roads in the county I had not been down at least once. I worked roadside response out of Monroe Station for over 18 years. Flat tires, stalled engines, lost tourists, you name it. I had seen it. I was used to long nights with no company except the dog in my passenger seat. His name was Diesel, German Shepherd, SAR certified, trained to track, scent, and detect motion before my eyes ever could. We worked together like a second set of lungs. He knew when something was wrong before I had to ask. The call came in around 9:15 p.m. Pickup truck stalled out on Litchfield Ridge, somewhere near mile marker 3. 4. No cell reception up there. The dispatcher barely had enough radio juice to patch it through before the line dropped. I didn't hesitate. Grabbed my tools, loaded Diesel, and took the high road. Litchfield was one of those forgotten routes. Used to be a fire access trail until a landslide closed it off in 2018. Still legally drivable, but no one used it anymore. Not unless they had a reason. About 15 minutes in, my comms cut completely. Not a crackle, not a hum, just silence. Diesel sat up stiff beside me, head tilting toward the passenger window. He let out a low, throaty sound that made me ease off the gas. His nose bumped the glass, and I saw the fur on his back start to rise. If it had been you, maybe you'd have thought the same thing I did right then. Someone needed help. And not until I saw that dry smear of blood dragging off the road into the trees did I start to question who exactly had been waiting. I found the truck half turned into a drainage ditch. Driver's door open. Engine cold. Looked like it had been there a while. No sign of a driver. There was a smear of dried blood on the pavement, no bigger than a handprint, but it stretched out in a trail, pulled into the brush like someone had been dragged. Diesel stayed inside the cab, whining. I took the flashlight and the stun spray from the glove box. No matter how long you've been doing this work, your gut still tightens when something does not fit. I stood just outside the truck's open door, scanning the tree line. Movement flickered deep in the brush. A figure, human-sized, half obscured behind a pine. "Hello," I called out. "You okay?" "I'm with Monroe Rescue Services. I got your dispatch." "Ivani, that we Jode not sad." No answer, just the leaves shifting, like someone had been there and moved. I backed away toward my truck. That is when I saw the footprint, pressed deep in the dirt next to my driver's side door. Not mine, not fresh. I shut the door fast, reached across and locked the passenger side. Diesel growled and stared toward the back window. Then the man came out. He was waiting behind the truck, crouched, low. He charged with a crowbar raised. I barely had time to yell. Diesel launched first. The man screamed, something sharp and ugly. Diesel clamped onto his arm and dragged him sideways. He broke free, and vanished into the woods. I threw the truck into reverse and gunned it, fishtailing over loose gravel. It was only when I hit a rut and heard the rim scrape that I realized my back tire had been slashed. The truck could still move, but barely. I eased it forward, the steering wheel shaking in my hands. The sound of the rim grinding against the pavement was enough to make me wince. Diesel kept looking through the rear window, every muscle in his body tense. I flicked on the auxiliary lights and crawled down the slope, slow and steady. The forest on both sides pressed close, the kind of dark that felt solid. Then a flash caught my eye. Someone out there was shining a flashlight through the trees. It blinked 3 times, paused, then blinked again. Diesel growled deep in his throat. I reached for the rubber-round pistol in the glove box, more for the sound than the impact. Whoever was out there knew what they were doing. I fired one flare into the night sky just to remind them that I was not alone. The truck jerked suddenly, nose tilting upward, as the front tires climbed a ridge of packed dirt. Then the world dropped out beneath us. The rear tires sink fast. The whole bed tilts. I slam the brake, but it is useless. The truck slides backward into the ditch. We hit hard, nose down, engine choking. I grabbed Diesel's harness and kicked open the door. The smell of wet soil and metal filled the air. The truck was done. The road was gone behind us. There was no signal, no backup, and no clear line out. We ran. Diesel pulled ahead, guided by scent, weaving through brush toward the old escape route marked on the map. I could hear someone behind us now. Footsteps, steady and deliberate. A beam of light swept the trees, catching the trunks in cold white slices. I stumbled once, my boot catching on a root. Diesel barked. Short, sharp, warning. I turned and saw a figure in the beam of their own flashlight. Same man, or maybe another. I could not tell. The light cut across his face and then he moved faster. He is running now. The distance closes. I can hear his breath, ragged and close. Diesel barks again and bolts toward him. I fire a flare straight into the air. Red light bursting through the canopy. The forest explodes in color and shadow. The man hesitates, blinded for half a second. Diesel slams into him, and they both go down hard. I run forward, shouting his name. The man swings once and catches Diesel on the flank. I raise the pistol and fire again. He stumbles back, trips on the roots, and disappears into the dark. Diesel limps toward me. I scoop my arm around him and keep moving toward the glow of the flare still burning through the fog. The light feels like the only real thing left in the world. By the time I reached the ridge, the forest was silent again. The air smelled like copper and rain. I pressed my hand to Diesel's side. Warm, wet, but shallow enough that I knew he would live. We stayed there until the flare died out and the sky began to pale. The first patrol found us 30 minutes later, following the smoke trail. No footprints but mine and the dogs were found near the road. I filed the report exactly as it happened. They called it an attempted ambush, part of a string of similar incidents that year. I called it something else. I called it the night the mountain stopped being a place to work and became a place to remember. Diesel still rides with me on the plains now. His fur has grown over the scar, but when a branch snaps in the wind, he lifts his head and growls quiet, low, the way he did on that road where no one could hear us. The first mistake was thinking it would be just another off-road shoot. I had done dozens with Troy and Ashley, testing modified pickups on backcountry trails, filming for Troy's YouTube channel. This one felt different from the start. The road we picked wasn't on Google Maps, not even on my offline topo charts. Troy got the tip from a retired logger who came through the garage last month. Said it used to be a supply line, old forestry route called Ridge Point Hollow. No markers now, no service signs, just a gravel trail that supposedly looped back to the main highway if you followed it long enough. Sounded perfect for views. Story hooks. maybe even a little folklore flavor. We were 3 rigs deep into the trees by noon. Me, Eric, driving the lead with Ashley beside me. She was a mechanic with better instincts than most GPS systems. Troy followed with the drone setup, always smiling, always narrating like someone was watching. We saw the first sign about 3 miles in, a wooden arrow nailed to a tree, painted red, pointing back the way we came. Faded letters beneath it read, "For exit only." Ashley leaned forward. "That a trail marker? It's Clay's." Troy laughed through the comm. Probably some old hunter's idea of a joke. It's setter. We thought it was just a terrain marker. But it wasn't a joke. It was a boundary. A line drawn between what should be remembered and what never wanted to be. The road narrowed, then dipped into an old drainage path. Maps stopped matching the terrain. There were no curves marked where the road turned. A couple places looked like someone had dug trenches on purpose. Troy flew the drone ahead for wide shots. But when he checked the feed, the frame kept slipping. The drone would turn left, but the GPS thought it was still going straight. We wrote it off as interference. But Ashley looked uneasy. "We've been going 12 miles, she said, checking the trip meter, but our average speed still reading 0. If you can see." I did not know what to say to that. The gauge had frozen like time had folded in on itself. Then we saw another arrow. This one sat at the base of a rotted milepost, on the far side of the road. It pointed diagonally off the trail, into the brush. Same red paint, but the arrowhead was cracked, like someone tried to tear it off. I hit the brakes when I saw the figure. Just for a second, maybe less, standing dead center in the road. A person, or something shaped like one. When the tires stopped, the figure was gone. No footprints, no rustle. We kept going. A half-mile later, we crossed a shallow stream and came out into a clearing. It was too quiet. No birds, no bugs, just stillness. And in the center of the open space sat a low stone pillar. Ashley leaned out her window. "That looks like one of those trail markers from tribal sites. They say for credit." Troy pulled up beside us. Camera still running. "Looks like a monster movie set." "One," he laughed. The drone dropped from the sky. Not drifted, dropped. We all jumped out. Troy ran to check the feed. The drone's screen was black, except for a frozen image. 3 people, standing in the clearing. Us. And behind Troy, almost hidden in shadow, was a 4th shape. Smaller, head tilted. No one spoke. Troy turned the drone off without saying anything. He tucked it under his arm and avoided our eyes. Ashley looked at me, lips tight. I could tell she was close to saying what we were all thinking. We needed to leave. Now. I threw the truck in reverse and spun around the clearing. The path we came in on should have been right there. It wasn't. The trees were closer now. Where we had driven was nothing but brush and packed undergrowth. No tire marks. No trail. Ashley whispered, "It's like we never drove through." In his nod or wide. We circled the clearing twice before picking the only direction that looked passable. Another narrow track, marked only by a broken arrowhead lying in the dirt. Someone had snapped it clean through the middle. Whatever it used to point to was gone. The forest grew darker the farther we drove. No birds, no wind, just the hum of our engines and the dry hiss of gravel under the tires. None of us said much, not until the light appeared. A faint yellow glow flickered through the trees. We followed it and came out into another clearing, this one smaller. A watch station sat crooked on a low foundation. Wooden walls, metal roof, windows dusted with age. But the lights inside were on. We stepped out together. No one wanted to be alone. Inside, the air smelled like dust and rain. A shortwave radio crackled softly from a desk in the corner. It was playing a local weather loop, dated August 1991. Ashley picked up the receiver. Static. She tried again, dialing a number from memory. No tone, no ring, just silence. Troy walked the perimeter, filming everything. He paused at the far wall, where something had been carved directly into the wood. A hand-drawn map. Only one road on it, curving like a loop. And above it, in deep slashes, exit only if remembered. That was when Troy froze. He was looking out the window, face pale. "There's someone outside," he said. I walked over, followed his gaze. Just beyond the edge of the trees stood a figure. Same build as me, same jacket, same hat. But I was inside. I turned around. Ashley stood in the center of the room, staring straight ahead, eyes wide open, not blinking, not moving. Then the lights go out. All at once, we are swallowed in black. The radio cuts. The drone battery surges, lets out a single high beep. No one speaks. We are not alone in that room anymore. I remember reaching for Ashley. I think I shouted. But the dark pulled tight around us and then it was gone. Next thing I knew, we were on the main road again. Bright daylight, asphalt under the tires. No idea how we got there. Troy uploaded the final cut a week later. It showed the drive, the clearing, the return. But none of us could remember making that turn back. Ashley stopped filming after that. Eric. Me. I burned every offline map I had stored in the garage. We never spoke about Ridgepoint Hollow again. But sometimes, when I'm driving past old state roads, I catch sight of something nailed to a tree. A red arrow, always pointing the wrong way. Most guys my age don't haul defense scrap. They either stayed in the military long enough to retire or got out clean and never looked back. I didn't have that luxury. 50 years old, ex-comm specialist, and I still needed the paycheck. That's how I ended up hauling decommissioned electronics and surplus parts across Appalachia. The job that night was supposed to be routine. Drive a retrofitted semi up into the border woods. Drop off a coated crate at a site called Storage Point 12B. Then get out. No paperwork beyond the invoice. And no questions asked. 12B sat just outside the old boundary of Fort Gladen, a base that got shut down in the late 90s. People around here called that stretch of land the Wall of Silence. Radio stopped working up there. Phones dropped calls. GPS acted like it forgot what Earth looked like. I figured I could handle it. Been in blackout zones before. Hell, I used to run missions and worse. So when I passed a rusted sign nailed to a tree that read "Comm Limit Zone," "Do Not Signal," I barely slowed down. I used to think I knew how to read tactical signs. But there are things no manual ever covers. Things you don't expect until it's too late. The paved road gave way to gravel. The trees grew closer. The map in my dash flickered once, then froze. Diesel purred under the hood like it knew better than to break the silence. About 10 minutes later, everything dropped out. No GPS. No cell bars. The truck's internal radio loop went dead like someone had cut the line. Then came a ping. Soft. Synthetic. From the console just above my head. It was the onboard recognition system, meant to respond only to official beacons. But the source tag returned the exact same ID as my own truck, as if something had just scanned me. From myself. I engaged the anti-jam protocol out of habit. That was when I heard the drone. A civilian quad model, hovering maybe 40 feet up, just outside the tree line. Its lens angled down at me. It did not move, just hung there like it was waiting for something. The temperature in the cab seemed to drop. I kept driving. My hands stayed loose on the wheel, but my spine was tight. From the far ridge came a faint glow. Pale, distant, unmoving. I should have turned around. The Storage Point 12B looked empty when I rolled up. Flat lot. Old shipping containers stacked haphazardly. No lights. My instructions were to park by the southern fence and wait for the crate sensor to deactivate. Standard drop and go. But the crate didn't deactivate. Instead, something inside the trailer beeped. I climbed back and opened the cargo door. There was a signal control unit back there. Government model. Still cold to the touch, like it had just been placed. I never loaded it. I shut the door hard and got back in the cab. Put the truck in reverse. Looked over my shoulder. The console screen flickers. The nav system shifts on its own. A message appears across the top in red. Authorized path. Calculated. Do not exit vehicle. Is it that way? The wheel vibrates in my grip. Just a little. Enough to tell me someone else has hands on it now. And I am no longer driving alone. I pulled the handbrake. The truck ignored it. I yanked the key from the ignition. Killed the mainline switch. Even disconnected the power jack on the steering relay. The engine kept running. The dashboard pulsed once and flashed the same message. Authorized path. Do not exit vehicle. I had been through enough signal hijacks in my military days to know when I was being steered. The truck was not under my control anymore. It was responding to something. Someone. Outside. And I had no idea what they wanted from me. I reached for the emergency shutoff tucked under the floor panel. As I leaned down, a pair of headlights washed over the cab. Bright and direct. Like a spotlight. A vehicle rolled out of the tree line. Matte black. No tags. No logo. It parked about 20 feet behind me and idled. Nothing moved inside. No doors opened. Just light and the low hum of an engine too clean for backcountry roads. I threw the truck into neutral and cut the brake line completely. The cab rolled backward, then veered off into a dirt side path. I let it coast until the terrain broke into old wheel ruts. Mud splashed up around the tires. The moment I gained control, I slammed the pedal. A sharp ping burst from the rear. The crate in back just sent a signal. I do not know where, but I know it landed. The same drone reappeared. It buzzed overhead, trailing a narrow beam of red light that danced against the trees. Not spotlight, not search. It was tracking. Following, I veered through a low dip and climbed a ridge cutout. Trees closed around me like a tunnel. I kept the lights off and drove blind for 30 seconds. The console sparked. A line of static ran across the monitor. Then a word. Liam. My name. It had never been programmed into the truck's system. I slammed the brake and jumped. Boots hit dirt. Knees bent. I rolled once and landed in brush. Grabbed my flashlight from the dash and the old field knife I kept duct taped under the seat. The truck kept moving without me, headlights pushing through the woods like nothing had changed. Then came another light, a beam cutting through from the opposite side. Whoever had been driving the black vehicle was now on foot, holding a handheld signal modulator, looking for me. I kept low, circled back and led him across a ridge where I knew the topography spiked. That zone had no signal access. We used to call them drop wells, places where communication tech just stopped. He enters the gap. His light flickers. The handheld unit stutters and dies. I charge from the right. He turns too late. The flashlight crashes into his hand. The device falls and snaps in half. He reaches for something at his belt, but I am already gone. Back into the trees. When I returned to the truck hours later, it was gone. No tire marks. No path. Just silence. They found it 2 weeks later, abandoned at the edge of a power grid station, 60 miles off route. No crate inside. No sign of who had driven it there. I quit the job after that. Started teaching survival skills instead. No more contracts without full manifest. No routes without redundancy. And even now, when I feel my phone buzz for no reason or hear a ping from a device I am not using, my first instinct is to run. Not because I am afraid of what it might be, but because I remember the one time it called me by name. That one hit a little different. If these stories mean something to you, leave a like, subscribe, or share this video with someone who'd stay up to hear it too. And if you've got a true horror story of your own, my email's in the description. Now, story 6. It was close to 7:30 when I hit the last stretch of road before the state line. I had just finished a 3-day loop delivering modular furniture across Kentucky and was heading back empty. The air was cooling fast and the ridgeline cast long shadows across the pavement. I remember thinking I might actually make it home before midnight. Then I saw him, just past a curve, standing near a faded mile marker. A man held up a cardboard sign that read, "Need ride, family emergency." He wore a dark hoodie, hood up, backpack slung over one shoulder. He looked tired, pale. He didn't step into the road. It just stood there watching my truck approach. I slowed without really thinking. Something about the posture, the sign, the quietness of it. I pulled onto the shoulder. The man stepped up to the passenger side and leaned in. "Just 20 miles, he said. "There's a station near the junction. My sister's waiting there." He's 7. He told me his name was Sam. His voice was low, steady. I noticed he didn't smile. I hesitated for maybe a second longer than I should have. Then I unlocked the door. I once promised myself I'd never pick up a hitchhiker at night. But that day, I was tired. And he looked small somehow. Just 20 miles. I thought, what could happen in 20 miles? We drove in silence at first. Sam rested his backpack between his feet. He did not look out the window. He just kept his eyes straight ahead, like he knew the road by heart. I tried to make small talk. Asked if he lived nearby. He nodded but didn't say where. It was when I asked if he wanted to charge his phone that I noticed. He didn't have one. No phone. No wallet. Nothing. "I lost everything when I left the house," he said. "It's been a bad day. I didn't want to bother anybody." If you asked a 9, my GPS flickered. For a moment, the route line jittered, then spun the arrow in a full circle before recalibrating. The truck was still going straight. I glanced over at Sam. He wasn't looking at the screen. He was watching me. I tightened my grip on the wheel and asked if he minded stopping soon. Said I needed to use the restroom. He shook his head. "No need. We're almost there. There will 2 Hefferns." Something in his tone made my stomach turn. That was when I looked down and saw it. A pair of leather gloves had fallen out from his backpack. One of them was stained dark, like something had dried into the creases. Blood. I kept my eyes on the road and tried to act normal. My fingers itched to grab my phone, but I knew I had no signal out here. My last bar dropped 15 minutes ago and hadn't come back. Sam shifted slightly in his seat, the gloves now tucked out of sight again. I forced a breath through my nose and said, "Actually, I really do need to stop. That last coffee's catching up." "Endar." He didn't laugh, just stared ahead and said, "We're so close. You can hold it. Intact as an Iramber." His tone had changed. Still calm, but firmer now, like he was the one driving. I spotted a rest stop sign up ahead. A small pull-off. Half the letters on the board were worn away, but I saw the outline of a restroom symbol. My heart pounded faster. "I'll be quick," I said. "Seriously. It is Wanacli." I turned the wheel gently, signaling as if everything was fine. As I started to veer toward the exit, Sam reached across and tapped the steering wheel. "No," he said. "Don't stop. Be last stash. In Elias by and Dectons." His fingers pressed lightly at first, then tighter. I yanked the wheel hard. The truck jerks onto the dirt shoulder. Gravel spitting. The brakes screech. The whole cabin leans sideways, groaning as the tires fight for grip. We stop. Sam shouts something and reaches for the gear shift. I open the door and throw myself out. Gravel tears at my palms as I scramble up, bolting into the trees without looking back. I hear the door slam, heavy boots on dirt. Then the chase begins. Branches slapped against my arms as I pushed through the tree line. My feet skidded over leaves and loose dirt. I had no plan, Just one thought pounding behind my eyes. Get away. Behind me. I could hear him moving too. Not running, just walking fast. Like he knew I would slip eventually. I tried calling 911, but the screen on my phone stayed dead. No bars. No GPS. No sound but my own breath. Too loud in the quiet. The slope ahead rose steep and jagged. I climbed, pulling myself up by roots and rocks. One gave way and I slid down hard, scraping my shin and elbow. I bit back a cry. Then I saw it. Headlights. A truck was approaching from the other direction, high beams cutting through the dusk. I stumbled out of the trees and into the road, waving both arms like a lunatic. The brakes squealed. The truck stopped. A man got out. Late 40s. Big frame. Reflective vest. "You all right?" He called out. "There's someone chasing me," I shouted back. He had a knife. He was in my truck. "Thanks for watching." The man started toward me, then stopped. Behind me, Sam stepped out of the tree line. His hoodie was open now, knife visible in his right hand. He did not speak, just looked at us both, eyes flat. I move first, run to the open back of the other truck, reach in fast. My fingers close around a steel bar in a pile of tools. I swing it the second he gets close. It hits his wrist. The knife falls. He grabs for me, but the other driver steps in, shoving him back hard. Sam stumbles, hits the dirt, scrambles up, and bolts into the trees. We didn't chase him. We waited with the truck lights pointed toward the woods, hearts racing, saying nothing. 10 minutes later, we called the sheriff from a spot with signal. They never found him. I quit long hauls after that, went back to part-time clerical work, safer hours, city routes. I never gave another stranger a ride, never would again. And the gloves. I left them on the side of that mountain. But sometimes, when I clean out my trunk, I still expect to see them there. One black leather glove, blood-stained, waiting. It was supposed to be a good first impression. My name's Jack Morrison, 27. Just started a contract run with Hollow Tree Freight. They stuck me on a midnight delivery through West Virginia. Nothing fancy. Just drive a load of construction equipment to a staging depot outside Charleston and don't screw it up. I was determined to come in early. Somewhere outside White Sulphur Springs. The GPS suggested a route I hadn't seen before. Clearburn East access popped up with a bright green highlight, shaving nearly 40 minutes off my ETA. I double-checked my offline maps. The road was there. It looked legitimate. Narrower. Sure, but fully mapped. I took it. About 3 minutes in, something caught my eye. A wooden sign stood by the tree line, half rotted. The paint faded to a pale smear. The message had been burned into the grain, not for those who go back. But the weird part, it faced away from me, like it was meant for someone, or something, following behind. I thought it was just a local saying. One of those weird country slogans people carve into driftwood and leave on fences. But now I know. It wasn't meant to warn me. It was meant to warn whatever had been behind me. The pavement turned patchy, then shifted to a smoother grade. Too smooth. Like someone had resurfaced only certain parts. The trees pressed close. The kind of thick you don't notice until your lights catch how still they are. I rolled down the window, just to hear something. There was nothing. The GPS flickered. Then the location pin slid off the route line. I tapped the screen, but it kept blinking, like it was looking for something it had lost. Cell signal dropped right after that. Just 0 across the board. Every road marker I passed had been scratched blank. It looked deliberate, like someone had taken a file and scraped the numbers down to bare metal. One still had flakes of paint curling at the bottom. I slowed as I passed what looked like a burned-out checkpoint. A fire had gutted the structure, leaving behind blackened beams and the rusted shell of a chair. A Forest Service sign lay in the dirt, half buried under ash. Then the road changed again. Fresh blacktop. Not patched. Not repaved. Like brand new asphalt had been laid across the stretch overnight. The smell was faint, but there. That strange bittersweet odor of tar not fully cured. I looked in the rearview mirror. For a second. Just a second. I swear I saw my own truck. Same make. Same shape. Same headlight configuration. Following at a distance. I braked. Hard. The road behind me was empty. I stepped out and walked to the back of the trailer. Everything looked normal. Seals intact. No signs of tampering. But when I wiped a patch of dust off the rear latch, I saw it. A handprint. Pressed into the dirt. Full palm. Fingers long and slightly curled. Like someone had gripped the door from the inside. A gust of wind slammed the latch, making me jump. That was when I saw it, tucked in the corner of the cargo hold, behind the emergency cone bag. The wooden sign, the one from the road. It was sitting in my trailer like it had always been there. I stared at the sign. Same cracked wood. Same burned-in words, not for those who go back. I hadn't put it there. No one else had touched my cargo. The latch was sealed. I shoved the sign out of the trailer and slammed the doors. Then I drove. I kept to the road, watched the sky shift from gray to black. Every time I turned, every detour, every fork, I ended up back near that burned checkpoint. The wheel felt loose in my grip, like the road was nudging me in one direction only. I tried reversing. The GPS reactivated, but it displayed a new route now, labeled Return Path. Active. There was no clear origin, no destination, just one blinking arrow pointing forward like a dare. I kept driving. Headlights washed over trees I'd already passed. Eventually, I saw lights ahead. A junction. Real street lamps. A truck rolled past. Horn, low and steady. For a moment, it all looked normal again. I pulled to the shoulder, heart thudding like it was finally allowed to. My phone buzzed. Full bars. Messages started pouring in. I called the receiving depot to let them know I'd be late. Good, the guy said. As long as you didn't take Clearburn, you should be fine. Is this to action? I paused. I did. Now, there was silence on the other end. Then the line dropped. No dial tone. No click. Just dead. Still shaking. I pulled into the depot an hour later. It was quiet, mostly empty. A single staffer waved me in. I parked, climbed down, handed off the delivery sheet. The man looked at it, then looked at me. Jack Morrison. Ding's ours. I nodded. He didn't answer, just motioned for me to follow him. Inside the warehouse, past rows of boxed equipment and racks of forms, was a bulletin board, yellowed flyers, safety posters, and at the center, a newspaper clipping. Today's date. Fresh ink. Headline, Missing Driver. Last seen on Clearburn East. Below it was my photo. Same jacket. Same name. The date of disappearance. August 2021. But this was my first run. My throat goes dry. I take a step back. The floor feels too far away. I look at the man again, but he will not meet my eyes. Something had gone wrong. Not on the road. Before it, or maybe during. I kept driving after that, but never shortcuts. Not even familiar ones. At every rest stop, I scanned the bulletin boards, just to make sure that my face isn't there again. And sometimes, at night, I check my mirror and catch a glimpse of myself, looking back. But I cannot remember just now, where my eyes had been before that. I was not supposed to be driving that day. Dispatch was short one driver and the delivery window was narrow, so I volunteered. I figured it would be a simple favor. Just one load of sealed electronics to a substation west of Charleston. Nothing complicated. They sent me out with a mid-sized delivery van, GPS loaded, cargo locked, and a printed route. But somewhere between Fayette and Greenbrier County, the system rerouted. The screen blinked and pulled up an alternate path called Tunnel 6 route. I checked the offline map, and it still showed as valid. I hesitated. I remembered hearing about Tunnel 6 years ago. A partial collapse. I thought, maybe a landslide or a burnout. But the road was showing green, and the tracker was silent. No warnings. I moved on. The trees thickened. The air felt heavier. And just as I turned into the old mountain pass, the GPS lost signal. The radio dropped into static. I glanced at the delivery manifest and flipped through the last page. It showed each cargo slot and its code, all standard, until I reached the last compartment. Someone had marked it with a strange, jagged swirl, almost like a claw. At first, I assumed it was an ink smear, but it looked too deliberate, like something had scratched it into the paper and it bled through. Have you ever driven into a tunnel and felt like it was breathing? Not sound. Rhythm. A kind of cold that pulses. Not because of the weather, but because the rock around you knows you are there. The tunnel mouth appeared without warning. No signage. No lights. Just a black opening under the ridge. I switched on the headlights and moved slowly in. Inside, the tunnel curved slightly, the far end just out of view. My beams struggled to reach past the first bend. Every so often, they flickered. Not off, just dim, like the air itself was swallowing the light. Then came the first jolt. A hole in the center of the path, not deep, but wide enough to force my front wheel into a hard slide. I corrected, heart thumping, and pushed on. Each time I passed through one of the darker sections, something odd happened. Condensation gathered on the rearview mirror. Only the rearview, like breath. Warm, heavy, timed. Once, I swiped it clean with the back of my hand and found a long, thin smear across the top edge of the glass. Not mine. When I neared what should have been the tunnel exit, I saw someone, a figure standing to the right of the path, next to a collapsed stone support. Still, head slightly tilted, face hidden in shadow. I tap the horn. The figure starts to fold. Its spine arches, shoulders drop. It begins collapsing in on itself like a marionette without strings. I hit the brakes. The van skidded and stopped just before the next bend. I reached for reverse. The wheel turned, but the rear tires would not move. One of them had caught on something. I looked down and flipped on the cabin lights. A dark, wet stain spread across the passenger seat, and above it, on the inside of the glass, was a handprint. Too long, crooked. The cargo door behind me gave a soft metallic click, like it had just unlatched itself. I did not go to the back. I grabbed the flashlight and got out. The tunnel was too quiet, not silent, but heavy, like it was waiting. I stepped away from the van, boots crunching softly over grit and metal shards. Behind me, I heard the cargo door creak again. I did not look. Instead, I moved toward the tunnel exit. I knew there was a secondary service corridor built into the side wall, something from older maps. Sure enough, I spotted a narrow hatch just past a crack in the concrete. I slipped in and pulled the door closed behind me. The corridor smelled of rust and mold. The overhead light tubes were shattered. My flashlight beam caught claw marks along the interior walls. Long, jagged tears, like something with hands had dragged itself through here. At the far end, I found what looked like an old breaker panel. It had been torn open. Wires hung loose like veins. There were prints along the wall, elongated smears, wet to the touch but cold as stone. Then came the sound. Breathing, not like lungs, but something deeper, pressurized, pulsing. I turned off the flashlight and held my breath. From above, Something begins to move. Not walking, climbing. Its limbs are too long. Its back bends the wrong direction. I hear the scrape of skin against ceiling tile. Then it drops behind me, soundless. I run. I sprint down the corridor and back into the main tunnel, aiming for the daylight barely visible at the far mouth. The thing follows. Its movement does not echo, but I know it is there. I hear the faint tap of its fingers against concrete. I do not turn around. The light grows closer. The tunnel narrows. My side aches. Lungs burning. I dive through the last opening in the stone as something brushes the back of my jacket. Sharp. Cold. Too smooth to be bone. I hit the ground outside and roll into gravel. The air is real again. Sound returns in a rush. Birds. Wind. The low groan of distant trees. I lie there until my hands stop shaking. They found me hours later, half conscious, dehydrated. I told them I had gone through Tunnel 6. They looked at each other, then at me. Tunnel 6, they said, was sealed off, removed from state systems more than a decade ago. I stopped asking questions after that. Now, when I run a route, I check every manifest twice. If I see a cargo slot marked with an unusual symbol, I ask for reassignment. And if I ever drive through another tunnel, I do not turn on the cabin lights, because reflection only works when you are the only one in the seat. I'm really glad you've stayed with me this far. Before we move on to the next story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you won't miss any of our new videos every single day. Now then, let's continue. I live on the edge of the Blue Ridge, in a small house tucked between two ridge lines. If you've ever stayed out here, you know how the nights feel. So still, you can hear the clock ticking across the room. When I can't sleep, I drive. Sometimes I take Route 46. No destination, no reason, just the hum of the tires and the dark pressing close. I work from home, doing IT support, so my schedule's always messed up. I'm awake when everyone else is asleep. Around 2 or 3 in the morning, I usually get restless. That night, I remember the rain. It wasn't heavy, just a slow drizzle that turned the road into a mirror. When I turned on my GPS, it showed something strange. Route 46 was marked in red with a note that said, "Road closed due to reconstruction." That didn't make sense. I'd driven it the day before. No construction. No signs. Nothing. I figured it was a glitch. We lose signal all the time up here. So I shut it off and kept driving. At the third curve, where the road bends around the slope, I noticed something missing. The reflective Mile 13 sign wasn't there anymore. Just a rusted metal post leaning toward the ditch. I slowed down a little, trying to remember if I just missed it before. The rain picked up, and my headlights caught something bright along the shoulder. A cluster of fake flowers tied to a rock. A faded photo, and a few burnt-out candles. A roadside memorial. I pulled over. The night was thick with pine and wet asphalt. The crickets had gone silent. I pointed my phone light down at the picture. The man's face was so water-stained, I could barely make out his smile. Underneath, someone had written, "Drive safe." Jimmy. Break-in. I knew that name. There'd been an accident out here back in 2019. A man named Jimmy Collins, early 30s, lost control of his truck and burned to death on the stone bridge a few miles ahead. I'd read about it on a local forum. When I got back into my car, my GPS had turned itself on again. The screen showed the same stretch of road with a red warning, "Reconstruction zone ahead." Estimated completion, 2019. In Clearburn East. That date made me pause. Maybe it was a software glitch. I told myself. Maybe my phone was just acting up. I started the engine. That's when I heard it. A metallic clank behind me. Sharp. Hollow. I looked into the rearview mirror. Someone was standing in the middle of the road. He was wearing a gray jacket, facing away. When my headlights hit him, he turned, and I swear to God, there was no face, no eyes, no mouth, just smooth, pale skin like melted wax. I hit the gas. The tires spun on the wet pavement before catching grip. When I checked the mirror again, the road was empty. By the time I reached the bridge, my hands were shaking. I saw headlights through the fog. A silver pickup truck, crumpled and smoking, parked sideways across the bridge. The taillights blinked weakly. I honked, but the sound seemed swallowed by the mist. Then my phone buzzed. The GPS lit up, showing my position right on the bridge. The road name was gone. Only one red line remained, flashing with the words, "Fatal Zone Active." Now it's okay. I looked up and saw someone sitting in the truck's driver's seat. Their head was tilted to the side, eyes wide and white, staring straight at me. And then, the truck's headlights flared on. I don't remember flooring the gas. I just remember the sound of my own breathing and the bridge disappearing behind me. The road sloped downward, twisting through fog thicker than before. But something felt wrong. This hill was supposed to last half a mile at most. I'd been driving 5 minutes and it hadn't ended. The fog pressed against the glass. Every few seconds, my lights swept past another memorial on the shoulder. Fake flowers, candles, old photographs. Hundreds of them. I turned the GPS back on. It still read Fatal Zone Active, but the map had zoomed in closer. 2 dots appeared on the screen. One for my car, one a few yards ahead. Something else was on the road. I leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. A faint light appeared in the mist. Headlights. They were coming fast, straight toward me. I jerked the wheel just in time. The cars passed so close, I could feel the air shift. And in that flash of white light, I saw the driver. It was me. Same car, same face, same look of terror. The 2 vehicles never touched, but the sound of metal twisting filled the air like an echo of something that had already happened. I pulled over, shaking. My fuel gauge was nearly empty. Far ahead, through the fog, I saw a glow, a gas station sign flickering weakly. Rick's Stop, open 24 hours. I'd never seen it before, but I didn't care. I just needed someone else to be there. The door didn't open automatically, but when I pushed, it slid aside with a click. The air inside smelled of oil and dust. My shoes left prints on the floor. The coffee machine was still plugged in, but the pot was bone dry. A small radio in the corner was buzzing with static. Then a man's voice broke through. The victim has been identified as James Collins, 33, who died at the scene of a fiery crash on Route 46 early Saturday morning, August 17th, 2019. I froze. On the counter was a photo frame. The same man, Jimmy, smiling beside his silver pickup. Only this picture was clean, bright, as if it had just been taken. I pulled out my phone to snap a photo. The screen went black, then filled with a single line of text, "You were here." There's no sings. The lights went out. Outside, my car's headlights flicked on by themselves. The engine started, and in that glow, I saw someone sitting in the driver's seat. My seat. He lifted his head. His face was smooth and empty, except for a small red light pulsing in the center of his forehead. My GPS. The screen on the dash blinked once, twice, then showed Fatal Zone Reset. I can't. That's when I understood. The accident never ended. This road doesn't lead anywhere. It just loops, pulling anyone who drives it back into the same crash, again and again. I ran. The fog swallowed me whole. I could still hear the hum of the engine somewhere behind me, fading and returning, over and over, like breathing. So if you ever find yourself driving through the Blue Ridge at night, and your GPS flashes a red warning that says, Route 46, Reconstruction, don't ignore it. Turn around. Because if you keep going, that road won't take you anywhere. It'll only take you back. I had been hauling for almost 12 years, and I thought I had seen every kind of road the Appalachian backcountry had to offer. But that night, on my way to deliver backup power systems to a remote dam in West Virginia, I took a shortcut I should have ignored. The road was called Old Mariner's Cut, one of those names that sounds charming in a coffee shop story, and cursed when you see it carved into weather-worn wood at a fork no one uses anymore. I was running solo, except for Murphy, my black lab, riding shotgun like he always did. He was calm, quiet, only barked when he really meant it. My divorce had finalized 2 months before, and to be honest, Murphy was the only one I wanted in that cab. We'd been through ice, floods, and worse together. The shortcut came from an old-timer at a fuel stop near Blacklit. He said it would shave an hour off and let me bypass a washed-out detour. Just keep your eyes open past the first split, he added, like it was a riddle. I figured he meant potholes. About 10 minutes in, fog started to settle. Not heavy at first, but thick enough that the road lost its edges. The headlights caught the outlines of something white along the shoulder. Concrete posts, mile markers. They looked too clean. No grime, no chipping, just smooth white, like someone had poured them last week. Murphy gave a low growl, then another when we passed the next one. Easy, I muttered. It's just old concrete. Buddy, is not guy Deddy Phage. If you've ever driven a rig through backcountry fog, you know, the silence can lie to you. But a dog doesn't that. After a while, the markers started showing numbers. 204, then 207, then, suddenly, 213. No warning, no logic, just a leap. I slowed down. That is when I saw it. A rotted sedan crushed into one of the concrete markers like it had been driven there on purpose. Hood caved in, windshield shattered. The front wheels sunk into the ditch like they had been there for years. But the tires were newer, clean. I stopped and flicked on the hazard lights. Got out. The smell hit me first. Not rot, oil and rubber. I walked around the wreck and saw them. Spike traps. Old strips of rusted metal with sharpened nails, hidden under the crumpled body. Not meant to stop the car, meant to stop someone else. Murphy barked from inside the cab. Loud. Repeated. I turned fast. In the mirror, just for a second, I saw movement. A figure low to the ground, crawling under my trailer. Hey, I shouted. The figure bolted into the trees. I scrambled back into the cab, slammed the door, threw the truck into gear. That is when I saw headlights ahead, blocking the pass. Another set blinked on behind me. No radio, no phone, no signal. Murphy was barking like mad. I gripped the wheel, heart thudding. I slammed the truck into reverse. Tires spin, but the road is too narrow, the grade too steep. The trailer fishtails. There is no room to turn, and no time left to think. I had one choice left. Off-road. The old trail that cut into the trees was little more than a rut, but it was wide enough to fit half a rig if I took it slow. I turned the wheel and gunned the engine. The tires screamed on wet gravel as I forced the trailer in sideways. Branches clawed the mirrors, scraping across the windows like nails on glass. I could feel the rear wheels dip into mud, the trailer pitching to one side. The headlights behind me grew brighter, closing in. Whoever they were, they knew this road better than I did. The truck lurched once, twice, then the engine coughed and died. The dashboard lights flickered out. Silence. I grabbed my flashlight, the emergency knife, and Murphy's leash. Come on, boy, I whispered. He jumped down from the seat, tail stiff, ears up. He was ready before I was. We ran. The trees were thicker than I expected, the fog rolling between them like smoke. Somewhere behind us, I heard the grind of tires and metal, then voices. Men, low and even, just the dog first. Hayes cells. They were close enough that I could hear the wet crunch of their boots. Murphy's growl rumbled deep in his throat. We sprinted downhill, stumbling through brush until my feet found slick mud. The world dropped out beneath us. We fall. The slope gives way. I hit the ground hard. Roll twice. The air knocked out of me. Murphy yelps. I reach for him in the dark. His leash jerks once, then goes slack. He had snagged on something. I crawled to him and saw the fence post. Bent metal. Jagged edge. His flank was cut deep. He was still breathing, but it was bad. His eyes met mine. Trusting. Scared, but trusting. A flashlight beam swept across the hill. The men were coming. Murphy barked once. The sound echoed across the slope. I whispered, "No, don't. It." He looked at me, then toward the light. I unhooked the leash. My hand shakes. "Go," I whisper. "Go." He limps into the fog, barking again, pulling the light with him. The beam follows, then a shout, then a gunshot. The echo carried, sharp and final. Then everything was quiet. I stayed hidden in the rocks until dawn. When the light broke, I stumbled back to the road, half blind from exhaustion. A forestry truck found me there. They said I was lucky to be alive. They searched for the wreck, for the markers, for Murphy. Nothing. No tracks. No traps. No sign anyone had been there. I put up flyers across 3 counties, checked shelters, clinics, anywhere with a name on the door. No one ever saw him. I quit the long hauls after that, sold the rig, got an office job in St. Louis, but I kept one thing: Murphy's collar. It hangs from the rearview mirror of my car. The tag is scratched and bent, but the words are still clear. Murphy, ride or die, is not of came, it's again a beer. And every now and then, when I drive through fog, I swear I hear him in the back seat. Not barking, just breathing. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. I truly mean that. If you enjoyed these stories, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. That way, you won't miss the next ones. And once again, thank you for walking this dark road with me tonight.